Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to get started. Welcome to today's meeting of the Prosperous Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and today's date is the Wednesday, the 19th of October. Good afternoon to those in the room, and good afternoon to those who are joining us online. Matthew Shopplebotham is coming in first, and Bernard Williams, I believe, is poorly, so he's just listening in. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Oh, he's not. He's perfectly fine. He's got a boiler problem. Sorry, Bernard. I thought you were poorly. I've just made him ill for no reason. Okay, so we'll get straight on with the first item on the agenda, which is apologies. Jonathan.
Have apologies, Chairman, from Peter Kruskonjic, Saeed Hussain and Bernard Williams.
Okay. Bernard, yeah. So, and obviously, you will all know by now that Ian Lawson passed away and was a very valued member of this committee for a long period of time. So, hopefully, the leader will find a suitable person to come into this committee at a stage when it's convenient. So, at the moment, we just convey our thoughts and prayers to Kay and the family. And we know that Ian is no longer in pain and has gone to a better place. So we'll move on. Minutes of the last meeting. Everybody happy that those that were present, true record of accounts? Thank you, David. Thank you, Philip. Graham. Philip, Graham. And we'll move on to the first item on the agenda, which is the Economic Recovery, Renewal and Transformation Economic and Rural Strategy. Over to Councillor Philip White.
Thank you very much, Chair. So this is our opportunity for a 6-monthly update to you. The report in front of you is quite detailed in terms of that update, both in terms of the progress of the development of the economic strategy and the rural economic strategy. Some details of the broader conditions in the economy as we find it today, and the progress of our various work streams related to our priorities, which I don't need to rehearse to you. You know what our priorities within this area are. The overall picture is the consultations went very well. We received a good response rate to both, and both sets of responses were broadly supportive of the strategy. There were a few detailed changes that were suggested, particularly around links to innovation and also our digital strategy, which sits separately under Councillor Tagg. But we're happy that those can progress, so that they'll now continue through the rest of our processes, and we're pleased that that's the case, that we're on the right track. Clearly, there are concerns in the current prevailing economic climate, influenced both by global and more recently national events, that are creating challenges for businesses everywhere, including in Staffordshire. So those are particularly around energy prices, broader cost price inflation, and also labour market shortages. Staffordshire continues to perform well as an economy. Our businesses are resilient, but there are nonetheless challenges within that we are concerned about, particularly the very high vacancy rate that we have. We have over 20,000 vacancies in the county at the moment. Our businesses want to be able to grow, but finding the skilled workforce to meet that demand is something that we're working on. And I can speak to some of the ways in which we're contributing to that work if the committee wants me to. And then the other concern is around energy. We've got a 6-month settlement in terms of supporting businesses with energy prices, and a promise of a review in the spring now from the new Chancellor. We have a lot of energy intensive businesses within Staffordshire. The nature of our economy means we're more exposed to that than in some other places. So we are particularly keen to see ongoing support for our businesses in general, but particularly in those energy-intensive sectors of our economy. Obviously, that needs to be balanced with energy efficiency, but in the short to medium term, the cost of energy in the way that it's sourced at the moment is the key priority there. I'll highlight a couple of other things very briefly, and then I'll hand back to you, Chair, to start the questioning. I must mention our investment zone proposal. So we were very pleased to be invited by government to submit an expression of interest for an investment zone, and in keeping with our strategic corridors priority, and also demonstrating the benefit of our investment ready projects priority, we were able very quickly, bearing in mind these investment zones only emerged a couple of short weeks ago, to bring forward what I think is an extremely strong proposal for the Hydrogen Technologies Valley, which runs along the A50, A500. Our proposal being for the Staffordshire section of that, obviously the corridor runs from the M1 to the M6 in broad terms. And that focuses around Blythe Vale in Staffordshire Moorlands and the Branston Locks development in East Staffordshire. And that's really geared towards turbocharging what's happening along that corridor at the moment in terms of high-end manufacturing, particularly products that use hydrogen to make things go. It's probably the best way of describing it. So an exciting opportunity there to be seized, which I hope government will receive well. The other thing that I will just highlight is our jobs brokerage scheme. I mentioned earlier that one of the big challenges in our economy is access to skilled labour, and we are just on the cusp of rolling out a great new platform that we've been developing for some time in line with our highly skilled, highly paid workforce priority, which is matching local demand from businesses and local demand from individuals looking for jobs to join employers and individuals up, but crucially to match them with a skills package where needed as well, so joining in local skills providers. This is something that we've identified as a gap between the work that private sector employment agencies provide and DWP provide, and it is that third point of the triangle, really, the skills package going with linking up the individual and the employer. We're really excited to see that going. As with all of these things, it's a partnership effort, but we are driving that one, and we think it should make a real difference. So I'll leave it there. Delighted to take any questions that the committee has.
Thank you, Councillor White. I am aware that Councillor White needs to go and chair another meeting at 2:45, so questions briefly. Graham.
Thank you. Couple of points on the A550. I was also thinking perhaps we should be adding the A34 between junction 14 of the M6 and junction 16 of the M6, because not everything's about highly skilled jobs in terms of high-tech jobs. There are also skilled jobs in terms of logistics and warehousing. And we have an awful lot of logistics and warehousing positions between junction 14 and junction 16 on the A34 or along the A34. So that's one thing that I think that you ought to consider at some stage. The other thing is, as I said, not everybody can do high-tech jobs. In the last full council, you mentioned about the numeracy work that Staffordshire are doing to get people who are innumerate or do not have the skills. Can I say that illiteracy also goes with that? And when 25% of the population, which I believe, did a little bit of research, I believe that's the current account, has less than good illiteracy and numeracy skills, I just think that perhaps we should be looking to see how we can get those people back into work. Because if you can't read a health and safety sign, you can't get a job. And it's an indictment of our education system, I accept, but here in Staffordshire, I think we should be trying to do something about it to allow these people back into work. Because what happens if you can't read and write is quite often you end up in prison where illiteracy rates are 67 to 70%. So because they can't do anything else other than get involved in crime. So it's really, really important that people who haven't done that well at school, we can get them into work, perhaps into the logistics industry, but you've got to be able to read signs to even get a driving licence. So I think that's really important that we invest or look to work with the government to try and invest in that area, because I think it'll just be positive for Staffordshire all the way around. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor White, did you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Hutton. So, some really good points there. The investment zone proposal that's gone in matches the specs for investment zones. So, it does not by any means tell the whole story in terms of the opportunities that there are to invest in and around that corridor. And the A38 corridor, along with the A34 corridor, are two really good examples of that. We're certainly very keen to see the benefits of that corridor investment expanding into those areas. The other point I'd make regarding advanced logistics, which is one of our specialisms in the county, is we have a little bit further south, if you run that line down the A34, we've got the largest logistics development in Europe getting started down in South Staffordshire at the West Midlands Rail Freight Interchange. So you know, we really are logistics central. The key for me is that it's the highly skilled jobs rather than simply large warehousing spaces with people or robots whizzing around in them. So you make a good point, and it's one that's well understood. Regarding Multiply and literacy, yeah, Multiply is a fantastic national programme which we'll be delivering as the accountable authority here in Staffordshire. It's a really welcome programme and something that we can discuss here another time. On literacy, you're right, that is the other key functional skill that everybody needs, and not enough people leave school confident enough in. We already do some quite significant work in our adult community learning team regarding literacy programmes. It would be great to see that boosted by something of the scale and quality of the National Multiply scheme, and I think that would be a very good thing for government to take an interest in. Perhaps they'll wait to see what happens with Multiply before they move on to that, but I think it's an extremely good point. If you can't read and write, you will struggle in your life, won't you? And we don't want to leave people at 16 or 18 and say, okay, if you've not got there yet, that's you done. It's really important. So we do some of it already. It would be great to have something on the scale of Multiply to be able to do more.
David?
Thank you, Chairman. You won't be surprised to know that I'm going to ask a question about energy. You mentioned that we have a lot of high energy users. Do we have any strategy where we can advise business on how we can better manage our energy consumption? I'm thinking particularly where some companies are now offering times in the day of low energy pricing. I look at the acres of roof space that we have with nothing on it at all, where it could be providing solar energy. And I look at the possibility of taking the energy which is produced direct into the factory and not via the grid, which is very inefficient. And I just wondered whether we were looking at developing a strategy which would assist industry in what could be a major saving in their operational costs. Thank you, Jim.
Councillor White?
Yep, thank you for that. Thank you, Councillor Smith. So I think it is probably a question where you know the answer, because I know you're very engaged in this space, but I think you want to open up the discussion a little bit further. So we do provide that sort of support here within the County Council, but particularly in Staffordshire, SBEN, the Staffordshire Business Environment Network, is very active in this space. We also have thought leaders in this space, Keele University, I know you're very familiar with, and Staffordshire University as well, who are delivering some really good innovation in this space. If your question is about having an overarching strategy that draws all of those strands together, I would have to defer to my Cabinet colleague Simon Tagg, because that falls within his bailiwick as the Cabinet Member for Environment. But I'll be happy to pass on your question to him, and if you want to invite him here to seek an answer from him, then I'll be very, I'm sure he'd be very happy to come and speak to you. It's an entirely sensible suggestion, but I'm not going to tread on another Cabinet Member's toes in terms of making a commitment.
I appreciate that. You're quite correct that I'm very passionate about what we're able to do. I'm very interested that in the leaders division we have a major solar farm, and I look at all the roofs that we can see, not least of all those between Lichfield and Burnton, where there are acres and acres of potential for generation and, of course, revenue earning at the same time. So I appreciate the fact that you will go back to your Cabinet colleague, and particularly that we would look at a council strategy which pulls together those strands and actually start to make something work, because we're in very exceptional times and time is not on our side. Thank you, Chair.
If I may just briefly come back. So I will ask the question of him. It will be a decision for him as to whether that evolves into a strategy or not. And as I say, you might want to ask him that question here as well. But I entirely understand why you've asked the question. It's a very sensible question.
I've just got two comments, if I may. How do you feel, Councillor White, we could better engage with our partners for the good of the High Street, and how are we going to get to this rural digital connectivity that we seem to be struggling with the last 3%? And then the second part is just where do you see the challenges for Staffordshire going forward? So those are my two for you to answer now.
Thank you. So I think on the high streets, it is a priority for the county council that we actively play our part in the regeneration of our town centres and the increasing vibrancy of town centres. Principally, that is in supporting others. As you know, as a Tamworth Borough Councillor, for example, the funding for regeneration of town centres flows through district and borough councils, and our role is to support those endeavours, and in some areas such as highways to quite directly support that. In others around broader economic development, it's to provide expertise that resides at county level to our colleagues. We're very committed to doing that. In terms of the voice of business, I think the really exciting development there is the evolution of LEPs. So LEPs have historically had a large role in distributing funding, but that role is shifting now towards more of a business representative, big tent. So capturing the voice of business in the round and bringing in all of those member-led representative bodies, chambers and people like that. But I think also capturing the voice of retail business is a really important part of that, and giving them a seat at the table for that voice. I think that's probably the best vehicle for that. I think we have to be careful at the county council in not creating too many bodies within our auspices where they can get a bit tied up in our machinery. I think having that separate but with really strong links to us is the right thing to do. In terms of digital connectivity for rural areas, yeah, it's a tough one, that, isn't it? The solutions to that, I think, are partly in our hands. Again, I will just highlight it's Councillor Tagg who holds that strategy, but it's partly within our hands in terms of efficiently delivering schemes and efficiently promoting Staffordshire to private sector businesses that may want to get into that space. But I think a big part of it is in the hands of government in terms of the way that they fund schemes to connect up those areas where it's perhaps not economically viable at the moment for private business to do it on their own, or regulatory changes to make it an obligation on telecommunications businesses to do that. And then within the private sector, I think it's around innovation and finding better ways of connecting those areas where it's hard to lay a cable to them. And it's important that we play our part in that. A lot of that again is about it's place-based, it's the on-the-ground knowledge and expertise, and in delivering those national schemes when they come. And in terms of the future challenges, I think if we look beyond the, I hope, short to slight medium term in terms of inflation and the challenges that come from Putin's economic war to try and force us all away from supporting Ukraine. I think once you move beyond that, the priorities that we have in our strategy are the right ones. So we know that we need to support our workforce in becoming higher skilled and better paid overall. We want to support more startup and step-up businesses. We know that growing more businesses is essential for our future prosperity. The town centres are key. I spoke at the Midlands Development Conference on Monday, which is one of the largest conferences that happens each year in the regions. Big developer audience pitched the A50, A500 corridor, the hydrogen technologies corridor. They really liked it. One of the questions that came up was, okay, well, what about the towns? And happily, the answer that I was able to give to that is that government is investing a lot of money in our towns to improve them. But it just reconfirms the importance of that. If developers are looking at that and saying, your town centres need to take a step up in order to be competitive, then it's right that we have that in our strategy. Strategic corridors we've covered, investment-ready projects. I think the importance of having those ready is well illustrated by the fact that the investment zone scheme we've had to turn around in a couple of weeks. And I'll just say, as they've been sitting here quietly, Darryl, Ayres here, and Matt Shufflebottom on the screen, along with Anthony Hodge, they worked wonders pulling together that investment zone proposal in a very short period of time with our partners, both at the local authorities, so East Staffordshire Borough Council and Staffordshire Moorlands District Council principally, but all of the other districts and boroughs played a part in that. Our MPs were enormously supportive, and the private businesses along that corridor as well. That's the way we do things here in Staffordshire. It's a team effort, but we do that because we've got a strategy that everyone can cleave to and that they can feel confident in, and that they can see the benefits for their part of that jigsaw puzzle. And then the final one is net zero. So making sure that business contributes to that. They're all right. It's good that we've had the consultation on the strategies to confirm that those are the right things to do. We'll have to constantly monitor those, with your support, scrutinise them both as an overall package of strategic objectives, but also the delivery within that. But I think we're on the right track.
Thank you, Philip. Are there any further questions? No? Okay. So we've got 3 recommendations for this report today. The first one is that we obviously consider the update on progress made. We consider the interventions already made by County Council and partner organisation and recommend any further interventions to be considered by Cabinet. And we also invite the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Economy and Skills to bring an update on delivery of the strategy to this committee for scrutiny every 6 months. We've already got that, hence why he's here today. Are we happy with those recommendations? Yeah. All those in favour? That's carried. So those will go forward. Thank you for your time today. I know that was a bit of a whistle stop for you because we know you like to talk.
Yeah, it's probably good we were on a short time scale.
Short time scale.
Thank you, Chair.
So thank you for your attendance. And Darryl never sits quietly, by the way. He's doing something while he's been sat there. So we'll move swiftly on to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 5, delivering a future vision for the countryside estate, and Councillor Victoria Wilson and team.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Good afternoon, members. Can you hear me all right? Yeah, okay. So, members will recall that back in February this year, we brought outline proposals to the committee for a new vision for the countryside estate. And this would revise the 2019 Cabinet decision by retaining management of the estate in-house and working to maximise the benefits the estate offers to our communities. This reflected the changed context following the pandemic and also reflects the environmental benefits the estate offers to our work to tackle climate change and support nature recovery. Following this committee's recommendations from the February meeting, the report we're presenting today provides greater detail on the new vision for the countryside estate, setting out how it will contribute across the Council's strategic aims. In essence, our new vision will provide accessible and inclusive natural green space for communities and visitors, actively supporting health and well-being. It will showcase our work to tackle climate change, support nature recovery, and celebrate our heritage with the needs of conservation and recreation carefully balanced. And managed by the County Council and supported by community volunteers, the estate will provide opportunities for learning and enjoyment and provide business opportunities that enhance the visitor experience and contribute to sustainable site management. In terms of financial impacts, the Environment and Countryside Service has met its MTFS commitment through a significant restructure. Funding for these proposals will be through a variety of sources, including grants, developer contributions, cost recovery and income generation, plus business cases for larger development projects that may require additional funding. Officers will cover this and, importantly, the mitigations we're suggesting as part of our work to support communities in the light of cost of living pressures. So I'm now going to hand over to Sarah Bentley, who's Head of Environment and Countryside, to run through the proposals in a little more detail. And then, of course, we would welcome the committee's questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. So, following that introduction, I just wanted to outline the background to the proposals and to pull out some of the key points. Staffordshire has a large countryside estate of over 2,000 hectares, that's about 5,500 acres in old money, and that includes our 6 country parks, our local sites and our 3 greenways. So back in February, you asked us to bring back some further detail on our proposals and also to look at a greater focus on nature recovery. And so I just want to pull out the aspects of the paper that particularly respond to those requests. So Councillor Wilson has outlined the vision for the estate, which you can see at section 7 of the report. And then we framed the detail of the proposals around the Council's strategic priorities. So the first of these is around the economy, and our countryside offer is an important part of our destination management or tourism work, and also underpins Staffordshire as a great place to live and work. Section 14 shows a table which summarises some of the key actions around the economy, and particularly our desire to sort of improve the visitor experience on our sites. So a key priority is going to be improving our catering offers across our main country parks, looking at business opportunities that enhance the visitor offer and are compatible with the environmental aspects of our sites. We'd like to develop a parks promotion plan to make sure that people know what's available on their doorstep and what it has to offer. There's also a link to the skills sector. There is a bit of a skills shortage in the environment sector and sort of land management sector at the moment. So there are opportunities there for us to contribute to that. And we also want to develop our visitor facilities more substantially, particularly at Chasewater and Cannock Chase, where there is real scope to develop the facilities and make a much more enhanced visitor offer. Moving on, members were very keen to see a greater emphasis on the environment, and in section 16 of the report we outline the contribution that we're going to make to tackling climate change and nature recovery. The actions, again, are summarised in the table at section 20 of the report and include the targeted work that is already underway for habitats and species across our sites. We have some really fantastic sites. A large proportion of the countryside estate is designated at either national or European level for the significance of its wildlife habitats. So there's a great contribution that we can make as part of the overall nature recovery network across Staffordshire. There's also a great opportunity on the sites to look at the educational side of that and to promote what people can do to help wildlife and nature recovery and to help tackle climate change themselves. So a really good sort of shop window for our work on that. Another significant focus in the proposals is around health, well-being and community involvement. So we're proposing a healthy parks plan, building on some of the work that we already do around park runs and other opportunities for healthy activity and exercise. We particularly want to do work that tackles obesity and also mental well-being. And as part of that, we want to address some of the barriers that can prevent or discourage some people from being able to access and enjoy the sites. So that's going to be a real priority for us going forward. And we also want to significantly increase our volunteer offer so that local people can get really actively involved in managing the sites going forward. And again, that's building on the foundations of what we've done over recent years, but really kind of expanding that going forward. We'd also like to look at a supporter scheme for people who may not want to be actively involved in the sites, but may want to support in different ways, be that through crowdfunding or just simply finding out and knowing more. We also outlined some actions around transport and digital connectivity and also ways that we can link into activity to support young people to get the best start. And so then at section 32, we highlight some of the immediate priorities for the next 6 to 12 months, and that includes looking at our catering offers. We have currently a feasibility study looking at the potential to improve Chasewater Country Park, our parks promotion plan, the nature recovery work, greening our service and making sure that we're doing our own bit to achieve net zero, our volunteer strategy, and also some of the access audits to start highlighting some of that work that's needed to reduce barriers to people's enjoyment. So in terms of the finances, as we said, there are no MTFS commitments linked to this paper. We have delivered our MTFS through the restructure of the entire Environment and Countryside Service. In section 34, we highlight some of the ways that we're proposing to help fund the proposals. And that includes grants and external funding, developer contributions, income from leases and licenses, donations, and also by extending car parking charges to additional sites. So in relation to that latter point, we are very mindful of the cost of living pressures that are currently very much on everybody's minds. And so we are proposing a number of mitigations to try to make sure that we're not adding to those pressures. So in terms of the car parking charges, we're proposing that we won't put any meters in until the late spring at the earliest, and that those would be brought in as a phased approach. That initially, for the first few months, they would be on a voluntary basis so that those people who can contribute to the management of the sites through those charges can, but it's not mandatory in that initial period. We're also suggesting that the charges for those sites where we already have them in place are frozen at the current rate until April 2024. And then we will continue to provide the lower cost annual permit, which significantly reduces the cost of car parking down for those people regularly using the sites. So there are a sort of range of mitigations there to assist with that. We did also note in the paper that as we're looking at some of those sort of larger scale development opportunities at the sites, the feasibility work that we're doing at Chasewater, we're very mindful that our facilities at Marquis Drive on Cannock Chase also really do need some significant improvement. And we are looking at proposals around those, and we'll bring business cases around those should any sort of county council investment be required. But what we would be looking at in the first instance is the possibilities of external funding for those developments. Thank you.
Thank you both. Graham.
Thank you, Chairman. In paragraph 3, the 2,280 acres, or in David's language, 5,600 acres. I think as acres are still our standard unit for most people, it'd be very helpful having that, because that actually makes it one of the largest estates in Staffordshire. Lord Stafford's only got 5,000 acres in Staffordshire, so you're bigger than him. But also, when I read this first, until I asked Councillor Wilson, I didn't actually know whether this included farms or not. So to make it more, I know it doesn't, but it should be more specific that it doesn't. It, just for when you read it, otherwise I'm thinking, oh, well, you know, and I go off on a tangent thinking about other things. But other than that, excellent report. There's only one thing I'd like you to consider. Where we've got height in our parks, like Apedale, for example, let's get a wind farm up there. Because on-land wind farms are really, really cheap in comparison to offshore ones, because the windmills are a fraction of the height. And I just think that where we've got hills, it's not going to harm anybody having a few windmills up there, and that could feed into the grid and stuff like that. I just think we should consider it. I know we have to have planning and all that. However, if it's not on the table, it doesn't get thought about. So I'd like that added in. But other than that, an excellent report. Thank you, Chair.
David?
Yeah, Chairman, a couple of things really. I'd be interested to know, since the introduction of parking charges, I'm thinking particularly of Chasewater as one, roughly what's that yielded? Has it produced something which has been really beneficial to us in terms of income? And I do appreciate the cost of managing that, because you know, you only get people parking there on a nice day in any volume. I mean, you obviously get the dog walkers on windy days, but otherwise there isn't it isn't a consistent daily parking number. And also, I was interested in the point that was just made about wind farms. If we're to introduce wind farms, we need at some stage to change the council's policy on wind farms. We do have fairly clear guidelines on planning for the county on wind farms, and I would agree that that needs to be modified.
Victoria, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, I'm absolutely certain that Sarah will have very specific responses to those two questions. With regards to Apedale, you're not the first person to come to us to ask us about our plans for Apedale. In terms of turbines, that's more of a wider discussion. I don't think that's particularly for this report, but certainly I'm sure Sarah might want to have something to say about that. Thank you.
Sarah?
I think one thing to notice, we already actually have some very small-scale wind turbines at Apedale associated with the energy centre. So we have a building that was put in to kind of demonstrate some of those technologies. And there may be scope for some small-scale work, and I think that's something we can look at, but I think as part of a much broader programme across county council land. In terms of the car parking, it certainly does deliver massive benefits in terms of the income that comes in through that, which really helps us to manage the car parks themselves, but also to invest that money back in the sites. And a really good example of that, actually, with what we've been able to do with Chasewater, is that we used some of that funding to lever in additional money through the Rural Development Programme. So we had to match with sort of non-exchequer funding, and the car parking charges were deemed to sort of be that. And that helped us secure about £350,000 additional funding, which has paid for 2 new play areas, one at Marquis Drive on Cannock Chase and one at Chasewater, and a whole load of kind of heritage trails and interpretation and access improvements. So it just shows what we can do with that bit of sort of additional revenue coming in. It's ring-fenced back to the sites, and it enables us to really sort of, you know, improve the infrastructure and improve the visitor offer.
Could I just comment, Chairman?
Yeah.
I think that's very encouraging, because I think that when we first talked about introducing parking charges, I think particularly about Chasewater, was that it would be ignored and wouldn't be collectible because we weren't able to enforce it. And I'm very pleased that that's not the situation and that it's actually producing revenue. So thank you for that, Chairman.
Michael?
Thank you, Chair. This is a slightly left field question, and I apologise to councillors if it's going a bit off-piste. But I'd like to ask, are any areas of the estate suitable for rewilding? And has this been looked at all? And has it been considered in the light of developments that have been happening? I believe that the introduction of cattle onto Cannock Chase may be partly connected with that, but a full rewilding programme would involve something a little bit more radical, if I can put it like that. But it's been proved that this is enormously beneficial in terms of developing biodiversity and in terms of recreational value, amenity value. So are there any areas of the estate that would be appropriate for rewilding?
I think that's a really fascinating question, and it is a very live topic amongst ecologists around how we sort of manage and how we can increasingly bring in more kind of natural processes in the way that we manage for wildlife. The grazing on Cannock Chase partly does that because the natural way that heathlands would have evolved was through large herbivores, and that's what we think kind of originally probably created heathland. So to some extent, having conservation grazing does start to mimic those herbivores that sadly are now extinct, but by using sort of more domesticated cattle we can get the same kind of effect. So there's certainly aspects of that we can look at. We are looking at how we can do that with some of the watercourses on site. At the moment, I would say that's fairly sort of small scale, but certainly something that we're looking at, and how we can use those natural processes wherever possible. Because there are some really exciting examples elsewhere in the country, places like the Knepp Estate, which are doing amazing work, and there's some really exciting things coming out of that.
Any further questions? David?
Yeah, can I just slightly off the mark, but when we start looking at our countryside estate, I go back to when I first came onto this council, full of enthusiasm and bright ideas, and I produced a report from Birmingham University on how the wasteland that sits between the farm at Chasewater and Chasewater Country Park could produce sufficient energy to be able to power the whole of Burntwood. That got kicked into touch and was never debated. And so I think now, some 8 years further on, it would be very interesting to see Burntwood fully sustainable as far as its energy consumption is concerned.
Victoria?
Certainly, if you'd like to pass details on to us, we can investigate it by all means.
Sorry, Chairman, you have the details. You've got them somewhere. Who's buried them, I've no idea, but I supplied them to the council.
Obviously, cabinet members have changed over time, David, so if you'd like to forward them to Victoria, I know that...
I'm not sure I can find them now.
Oh, okay. We'll have a look at, yeah, if we can, ladies, that'd be great. Any further questions or comments? I only have one, and a really simple one for you, Victoria, probably. We're obviously all aware that we have volunteers on our estates that do litter picks, they do studies, they do planting and cutting back for us. Do we know how we record those and how many we've got across our estates at all? I thought that was a really easy one. Sarah?
We do have figures, and I can't remember them off the top of my head, but we tend to monitor, we obviously have a number of volunteers, but we calculate volunteer hours because obviously volunteers come in very different sort of ways. I think at the moment we're at around about 6,000 hours this year,
Wow.
but I'm not 100% sure on that, but our target this year is 10,000. We are still recovering from COVID, where we had to suspend quite a bit of our volunteering, and because we've been going through the restructure as well, we've been bringing a lot of new staff in, so we are kind of recovering our volunteering, and we are working on a new volunteer strategy at the moment, so we're really kind of looking at our whole kind of volunteering process. So our hope is to really significantly increase that, and also to increase the range of roles that are available for volunteers to do as well.
Thank you. So the other two questions were asked about car parks and wind farms. I also believe that if you've got a hill, stick a windmill on it. I like them. I think they're quite pretty. So we've just got the one recommendation for this report today, and that's to consider and provide comments upon the draft delivery plan for the countryside estate. I think we've done that, and I think you've got some really interesting facts and questions to go back with, so we'll look forward to those coming out again when you perhaps come back and see us, whenever that may be. So if there are no further comments or questions, that's the only recommendation. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you very much. I believe you're staying for the next one as well. So we're moving swiftly on to Staffordshire Libraries and Arts Services. Over to you again, Victoria. Oh, we're swapping seats.
I don't know what you've done to deserve me twice in one afternoon, so apologies for that.
Just thought we'd get the benefit of you being here and have you talk as much as possible.
Right, Staffordshire Libraries and Arts Service 2022 to 2025. So the report before you asks your committee to review and endorse the range of activity which takes place across Staffordshire Libraries and Arts Service, and to note the value that this activity delivers in supporting county council outcomes. You'll see that in sections 1 and 2 of the report, and to note and comment on the proposals for Burntwood, Tamworth, Cannock, Leek and Kidsgrove Libraries, which is in section 3 of the report. So as the county works to recover still from the pandemic, the library service has fully recovered the service offer and is delivering a blended programme of physical and virtual activity to support Staffordshire County Council outcomes. This is achieved through the delivery of 4 national university library offers: health and wellbeing, reading, information and digital, and culture and creativity. These are underpinned by 2 national library promises, the Children's Promise and the Print and Impaired People's Promise. Section 1 highlights the number of sessions delivered to support the universal library offers and the number of people engaged in these hybrid physical and virtual events. The infographic further down in figure 1 provides some detail around this activity, and the committee will note that 6,223 children participated in the Summer Reading Challenge at a Staffordshire library last year, with 11,367 participating in the Staffordshire History Festival events during September and October last year, and 923 of Staffordshire's children were gifted school uniforms over the course of 2021, saving families an estimated whopping £46,150. I think you can tell I'm quite proud of these achievements. Section 2 of the report provides some examples of how the library service is supporting Staffordshire County Council's priorities. The first example is Startup Hubs. This is a partnership project with Business Enterprise Support, who manage 2 of our community managed libraries, which are Silverdale and Clayton, and County Council officers in economy, infrastructure and skills to establish startup hubs with funding from Arts Council England in libraries across our county. The purpose of these is to provide people with easy access to basic information on working for yourself. The business support online tool, Cobra, can be accessed in the library or at home if you're a library member. The Health and Digital Literacy Pilot Project is exploring how working with partners in health and the library service can support 16 to 25-year-olds to access good quality health information in order to better manage their health and well-being. The Staffordshire pilot is the only pilot across the country to be focusing on young people and co-designed with young people. Staffordshire Libraries is one of 3 library services to secure a place on the Moonbeams Action Research Programme, supported by Arts Connect and the Centre for Research in Early Childhood. This programme of research is looking at how language and communication skills in the 0 to 5-year-olds can be developed through arts and creativity in libraries. The library service is one of 15 library services to secure funding to deliver on National Green Libraries work. The funding focuses on changing behaviours, the 5th theme in the County Council Climate Change Action Plan. A toolkit of resources is being developed for climate change library champions to help local communities make simple lifestyle changes. The toolkit includes ideas for displays and activities within the libraries. Section 3 describes the plans to improve the library buildings. A submission to Arts Council England for funding to improve the ground floor of Burton Library has been made. This focuses on widening the audience reach by creating a multi-purpose space that will include a maker space, sensory areas, and an improved audience area for events. Various groups in Burton and the Friends of Burton Library have been instrumental in shaping this bid, and further community engagement will take place if the submission is successful, and we'll know if that's been successful in February next year. As for Tamworth Library, which is probably close to the Chairman's heart, it's being reconfigured to accommodate County Council employees vacating the Borough Council building, Marmion House, as you know. This work includes a refresh of the library with new furniture and fittings. And in order for this work to take place and to minimise disruption to library staff and customers, the library has temporarily relocated to 56A Albert Road. The library offer at Albert Road will consist of the most popular adult and children's books, a small number of PCs, access to Wi-Fi and a meeting room. Tamworth Library has closed last Saturday at 4 o'clock, and it's reopening in Albert Road on the 24th of October. The refurbishment of the current library building is due for completion in spring 2023. With regards to Cannock Library, Cannock Chase District Council have been successful in their application for levelling up funding and have approached the County Council to see whether we would be interested in including Cannock Library in the provision of a cultural hub in the town centre that would include the theatre and a cinema. Engagement with the public took place in July and August, and we are currently considering the feedback together with further information and all the facts and figures, of course. Both Leek and Kidsgrove libraries are dependent on successful funding applications, so we wait to see what happens there. In section 4, we highlight the next steps for the library service, and Baroness Sanderson has been appointed by the government to develop a new strategy for libraries, and this is due for publication in spring next year and will shape our public library service delivery. With increasing costs of fuel, energy, food and travel, we're working with County Council colleagues and other partners to signpost people to existing support and have a warm welcome in your library campaign running this autumn. I've been around to some of our libraries already this autumn where they're offering free cups of tea and coffee and sometimes a biscuit if you're lucky, and we're really encouraging people to come in, use the library, meet the volunteers, join the groups, lend one of the million books, e-books, magazines that we have there, and just feel part of the community within our libraries. The library service will continue to develop the library offer based around the universal library offers, and will continue to seek and explore opportunities to improve our library buildings. And that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer questions if there are any.
Are there any questions, David?
Yes, Chairman. Two things, Victoria. The first thing is that I think that the most amazing thing that you have been able to succeed is what you've done with Lichfield Library. And I think when we start looking at the cultural development of the library, that the performance space on the upper floor is now being massively used and is being highly successful investment in that building. And I think it is probably, apart from the great libraries of the world, as a local library, the most amazing library I've ever stepped into. It really is fantastic. The other thing that I have in my division is Shenston Community Library. I think that we need to rethink the way we address community libraries. I know that they're not directly run by us, but they are indirectly Staffordshire County Libraries. And I think that we ought to draw them into the areas where we publicise what our libraries are doing. It always seems that we see a list of libraries that excludes the community libraries, and I think that we should look at changing that. They're libraries, the same as all the others. How they're run is not necessarily of any concern to the community. The only thing I would say is you get a better cake and a better cup of coffee in Shenston Library than you will anywhere else in Staffordshire. Yeah.
Victoria, I'm going to Shenston Library. Are you coming?
Yeah, I mean, please don't get me started on Lichfield. I could wax lyrical about Lichfield until the cows come home, and I wonder if perhaps Sue or Catherine would like to say something on that, because they are the people that delivered that to us. In terms of community managed libraries, we are one of the only counties, or one of the counties in the country, that has managed to retain every single library, and we've not closed one. The community managed libraries mean everything to us. We are so grateful to all of the volunteers that help keep those running. And of course the volunteers are grateful to us too, because it gives them a reason to go out in the day, and they really thoroughly enjoy it, and it helps with issues like social isolation and loneliness. So absolutely, and I take the chairman up on her offer to meet me for cake in Shenston, and I'll hand over now to Sue and Catherine in case they want to add anything.
Just add to that, that the point I was particularly making is that they need to look outwardly from the community's point of view to be drawn closer into the fold. We don't mention them when we talk about Staffordshire libraries, and I think that's a mistake.
Just to say, we're really proud of our libraries, and particularly our newest libraries that we've relocated and refurbished, so Lichfield being one of them. In terms of the community managed libraries, we talk at a national level, so we talk with Arts Council England and also with DCMS about our model, because we're really proud of it. And we've had over the summer visitors from Arts Council England and also from national charities that we've taken to see Shenston Library and also Lichfield Library, so they get a taste of what our community managed library model is. And the reason we take them there is it's on a good route from London, so people travelling up can, get there quite easily. And also, we've also invited the Baroness, who's been tasked with the new public library strategy, to come up. I had the opportunity to meet her last week, so I was talking to her about our community managed library model, which she's really interested in. She's interested in different sorts of libraries delivery models. So we've invited her to come up, and our plans would be to take her to Shenston and Lichfield again, because that's quite an easy route for her to travel. But also we've got other community library libraries that are doing some really good work as well, that we're really quite keen to showcase, and which we do talk about. I lead the Public Libraries Health Group nationally, so Warrington is another of our community managed libraries that focuses on health, so that's an opportunity for me to talk about what they're doing, and indeed what the community is actually doing. So I didn't.
Don't want to come in.
And just to provide some reassurance, we restructured the library service 6 months ago, And what we did as part of that restructure was split all of our libraries into 2 areas so that we could really bring in the community managed libraries so that they're working much more closely with their neighbouring county managed libraries. And we also have staff that support the community managed libraries because they are really important to us. They are part of our statutory network, and it's really important that they're able to deliver the same level of service with support from paid staff as any of our other libraries, because as you say, members of the public, members of communities don't recognise the difference between what's a county managed library, what's a community managed library. So we wanted to ensure that they got that support in place. We've now got area managers that sit across the north and across the south of the county that then have support for all of those libraries across an area. So we've got a south area manager, for example, and as part of that group, Lichfield and Shenstone are part of the south area so that they have really got the support that they need to develop, because what we've recognised is that community managed libraries do need that input from the county council, they do need investment, and we want to continue to ensure their success really in the future.
Can I just suggest that we do remember, for example, Shenstone Library. I was very instrumental in Shenstone Library becoming a community library and surviving. When we start looking at what happens with the local library, not just as far as Shenstone's concerned, but as far as members generally are concerned, they would like to know what's going on. And if something is happening where there's a visit from someone, it really would be a courtesy for members to be aware of that and to have been to meet the people that are visiting. I get very sensitive about any sort of visitation into my division that I'm not aware of. I don't want to go on about it, but I'm the elected representative of 10,000 people who live there, and I think that I should know what's happening. Thank you.
Absolutely take Councillor Smith's point. I feel exactly the same about my own division. I don't know if everyone here is aware, but there is a regular libraries bulletin update that goes out to all members with all of that data on. However, it is out of courtesy really something we should consider if there is any specific visitation by anybody to someone's division, to a library within that, then of course we should let the local member know. So that's something that I will make sure that happens from now on.
I don't wish to go on about this, but if you look at the member briefing, it treats community managed libraries separately, and so you can feel that it's something else rather than part of the county's library service.
I will take that on. I'll take that on board, absolutely. If I can just add that the entire library service of Staffordshire is an absolute jewel in the crown, whether it's community managed or county managed. It's a jewel in the crown of this county council, and we're very proud of it. And in fact, other areas in the country look to us. So if there's an area that we are failing on, then of course we'll pick that up. But we hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael?
Thank you, Chair. Towards the end of your report, Councillor, you added to what was in the report, I think, in referring to the warm welcome that libraries will be giving. Can I ask if the library service will be advertising its libraries as warm spaces? And even if it doesn't, is it prepared for the influx of people who might be coming in because they do offer warm spaces?
Through you, Chairman, my understanding is that districts and boroughs are looking at warm spaces around the county. We are offering a warm welcome to people in the library service, whether that's just to come in and meet the volunteers or to have a hot drink or just to sit down and leaf through a book. That's what we're offering. I think the districts and boroughs have a different initiative where they're looking at spaces around the county where people might be able to benefit from actually a warm place to stay and take refuge from the elements.
Michael?
But supposing they do come in because the library is a warm space.
Well, we are always welcoming in our libraries. Anyone is welcome to come in. We're not going to throw you out, don't worry.
Thanks, everyone. Just a few comments from myself. When I look on Member Zone for the library information every week, I get very good information about Tamworth Library, and I'm starting to get new information about Glasgow Library. There never seems to be anything happening at Wilnecote Library, yet I know there is, and we clearly don't have that information. Because it always comes up with nothing there. So I think we just need to look into what's going on at Wilnecote Library, because it's where I sit, and I know that there's a knit and natter group there. I know that there's the Cameo Club, which is for over 65s, meet there, and it's not listed on Wilnecote Library, so we can't share it. If it's not there, we don't know about it. I was very proud over the summer holidays to be part of the school uniform exchange. We did 2 sessions over the school holidays, one in the town hall and one on a free market stall, and helped over 52 families with free school uniform. So we were very proud of that. We got some really good press releases on that. And it's also quite humbling to see that the adult care and family teams will be moving out of Marmion House, out of our council building, into the library come the spring. And I'm a big believer, you engage with children and families at a very young age and signpost them to other things, you alleviate other problems going forwards. So that's a massive must for me. And lifestyle changes, I just wondered what else we could do about lifestyle changes. Are we going to be engaging with sports coaches or something like that? I'm not sure where we go with that going forward. So just to keep a few comments from myself. I don't know, Victoria, if you wanted to, or Sarah, you wanted to comment. Catherine even.
Just to pick up on Wilnecote, we do list all our activities on Staffordshire Connect, so I will go and check that and make sure that they are listed on there, because I was only looking the other day and we've definitely got community managed library activity listed on there, so I will check that for you. In terms of the lifestyle changes, this year with the Summer Reading Challenge, we've worked with some HAF providers, so the Holiday Activity and Food Programme, where they have been doing quite a lot of sport activity. And what we found in certain pockets where we've worked with them, they've actually set up like a small library in the hall where they're working with our resources and also with the Summer Reading Challenge materials, because I think what they recognise is that sometimes children want to break from activity and they just want to sit and read, sit quietly, and that's something that we're keen to progress next year as well with those HAF providers.
Any further comments or questions? Do you want to come in?
Just to add about changes to lifestyle, we've been approached this week by an organisation called Together Active that we've got a service level agreement with, and they're really keen to test within our libraries some physical activities to keep people warm, well and active over the winter months, and to test that with some of the groups that already meet within our libraries. So one of the libraries we're looking at is Purton Library, where we've got regular activities. We've also got a bereavement hub there. And if that then is successful, we'll then look at rolling that out across other libraries, because a key role for libraries over the winter is how we signpost people to the County Council's Here to Help campaign around the support for people in terms of cost of living. So going back to your point, it's more than just that sort of warm space, warm welcome. It's also about how our frontline staff and our volunteers are able to signpost people that come into our libraries to the wider range of advice, information and support that's available to people.
Thank you. David, did you want to come back briefly?
Well, I was just interested in the comment that you've made about the organisation that's contacted you about whether libraries are the right place for that sort of activity. I mean, we do have leisure centres and all sorts of other areas where people can go and do that. And I think I can't imagine in either Lichfield Library, Burntwood Library or the community-led library in Shenstone, where you could do other than sit and wriggle your toes. That they're not really suitable buildings for that sort of activity. And I'm just wondering whether they need redirecting.
I think I'd have to disagree with you there, David, because armchair and moving, even if you're sitting in a chair, is physical exercise. And I think the more people we can engage with to make those lifestyle changes, you know, I'll be the first to admit that I am overweight, I need to lose weight. However, I don't have time to go to a leisure centre, but I do go to a library. So if I could go to a library, do what I needed to do and do some armchair exercise while I was there, I'd be a happy bunny. So I'm all for getting people engaged with those lifestyle changes, even if it's only on a 6-week programme, which some people currently do on, is it lifestyle changes that we've got running with Staffordshire? So unfortunately, I'm going to disagree with David, but feel free to come in.
I think that's exactly the point, that people that go to leisure centres are already active and engaged. It's trying to work with a different audience, people that perhaps wouldn't see physical activity as something for them. So it's not about holding aerobics in our libraries, it's about those armchair exercises. And it's also building on the programme that we've got already, where we have walks that start from our libraries and then come back and people have a cup of coffee. So it's a low-level intervention, and they approached us because libraries are not off-putting like leisure centres could be. I would hate to go to a gym, but I would go to a library. So it's trying to engage people differently to keep people warm, well and active.
Graham?
Just very quickly, Chairman. People talking about coming into libraries because they're cold. Can I just say that wholesale gas prices are now a quarter today of what they were in August. They're falling. So we expect them to continue to fall. So I think that there's been a lot of talk about, oh, nobody will be able to afford anything, but they're falling. They just haven't fed through yet. But the gas storage in Europe is full. Gas storage, what we've got in England, is full, and the prices are falling rapidly. So don't believe everything you read in the press, because they've never been our friends.
David?
Just to mention that libraries have got a very specific role, and I don't disagree with the points that have been made if that's something that is appropriate to a library, but it mustn't get in the way of the main purpose of the library, which is for people to go and borrow books.
Victoria?
I remember the days when I'd go to a library and you'd go in, you'd have to whisper, all you did, you got your book and you went. Those days have gone now. Libraries are beautiful, bright, vibrant spaces where there are all manner of different things happening. Yes, you can, pardon? You can have cakes, and then you can exercise to get rid of those calories. There are so many things you can do, and I think it's so important, more than ever before, that people realise that libraries are community hubs. So you can go and have a natter with somebody. If you're a new mother that doesn't have a lot of help, you can go and meet like-minded mothers or fathers. But it's much more than just a dusty library space. It's a beautiful, vibrant place now where people go for all manner of things.
Thank you. If there are no further comments or questions, there are 3 recommendations again. That we note the range of activity, and I think some of us have been surprised at what actually does go on. Provide comment on the overall direction of travel for a library service. Again, I think we've all managed to do that. And to note the proposals for Burton, Tamworth, Cannock, Leek and Kidsgrove libraries, and we've provided comments as members on those. So are we all happy with those 3 recommendations? All right, that's carried. Thank you, ladies. You are free to leave. Oh, and Darryl, if you wish. So we'll move swiftly on to the item 7, the work programme. I'll just get the right page. I know. He's quite suspicious, isn't he, Darryl? Interested, I think the word is. Thank you, ladies. Ooh, let's just scroll down to the proper place where we are. So, the next meeting is, as listed, the Thursday, the 10th of November. And we've currently got the Household Waste Recycling Centre performance against key indicators. Just remind me, Jonathan, of the date to the recycling centre visit.
We've identified the 7th of November in the afternoon, Chairman.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Timings, yeah, exact timings to be notified.
Okay.
Because there are 3 sites.
Okay. Just, do we need to attend all 3, or can we just attend the local one?
I mean, it'd be good if as many members as possible can attend all 3, because
Okay.
it gives some context into the report coming to the next committee meeting. But obviously, members are free to come and go as they wish.
Okay, thank you. Can we just one at a time, Graham?
Are we starting at the Burtonwood Road one?
We haven't finalised the itinerary yet,
Oh,
Chairman,
right, 'cause
but it would seem sensible, I would have thought, to start at the Lichfield site.
That's
And then
Burtonwood Road.
Okay.
You know, I mean, is that what it's called?
That'll all come out when
Possibly.
the timings come out, Graham.
Okay, that's
David?
fine.
I was only going to say that it'll be a difficult thing to do all 3, because if we take our own cars, there aren't car parking spaces at the...
No, we'll be having transport from here.
So but if we have transport, we could all end up in the wrong place or whatever. We need to organise that.
So the transport will be from Stafford back to Stafford. So you'll start here, finish here, pick up your car, go home.
So you go to Lichfield and come...
Well, potentially. Okay, so that's household waste recycling, and we've got a visit to the household household waste recycling centres before that meeting.
Can I just say, Chairman, the co-opted members are very welcome to attend
Yes.
if they wish, because they're entitled to speak on the report as and when it comes to committee. So
We just thought it would be a good idea to see it in action before we came to the meeting. So if you want to go, Michael, let Jonathan know. Okay. We've also got digital infrastructure update, which we've talked a little bit today. So that will be Simon Tagg and team. Oh, Daryl's here for that as well. Tree planting net zero has been deferred to next year, is it?
it is, tree planting net zero by nature has been postponed. Indicative timeline is now April next year, 2023.
Okay, and we'll have a pre-agenda and a triangulation meeting before then. We may put something else on that agenda for November. And then obviously the 16th of December, please note the change. We are not meeting on the 22nd of December. It will be the 16th of December at 10 o'clock in the morning at my request. I stamped my feet on that one. And we've got the Staffordshire History Centre update from Victoria. We've got Highways Transformation Progress and Performance. And we may put something else on for that meeting, or we might just have a short December meeting with mince pies. Who knows? Jonathan?
If you are minded, Chairman, there's the electric vehicle charging infrastructure strategy.
Yeah, you sent me a note, but
Yeah.
I can't get onto it at the minute. I don't know what's going on. So, yeah.
That should be available in December.
Okay. So that potentially will go onto the agenda for December then, Highways Infrastructure, which is a real good baby of mine. I like that one. And that was the only one, wasn't it? There wasn't anything else, was there? We had civil parking enforcement scrutiny review as well. We're looking at February next year for that one. Tree planting, we've just discussed, will not be available till next year either. Electric vehicle charging infrastructure for the 16th of December, and HS2 6-monthly update will be due in February as well. So those will just fill into the work programme as and when they need to. Okay. So, as I said, the date of the next meeting is Thursday the 10th of November at 10 o'clock here. Item 9, exclusion of the public. We do not have anything to exclude the public for. So I will thank you for
Sorry,
your...
Chairman, can I just come back to the work programme? You unfortunately weren't able to go, but I attended the climate change working group, which wasn't an entirely happy meeting. Conor Wildman is taking a recommendation forward that the format of that group is not satisfactory and isn't right for members, and that it should be expanded to include all members of the council to be able to attend and participate. And I've raised that elsewhere as well. So we shall be able to say something about that. But it was very, very narrow. There was little or no member contribution, and it was a bit of a waste of time. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you for that, David. If there's nothing else, I'll thank you for your attendance and close the meeting at 15:21 and see you all soon. Thank you very much.